I firstly just wanted to start by apologizing to you guys for disappearing again. I feel like it happens all the time. And I don't want to even dive into where I've been and why I've been gone and all the nitty gritties and all of that stuff. Just know that we're here. It's another episode, another day, another dola. And boy, do I have thoughts. And I thought I would kind of set the premise for this episode and just say that this episode is not a review. This episode is not a recap, but we need to talk about the polygamist. Welcome to another episode of This May Be Nothing. Okay, I get it. Yeah, I've been gone, but I'm back now. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. And I guess that's what I'm doing right now. Like, hey guys, I'm back, okay? Yeah, I've been gone, but I'm back. And before you even think another episode, another what is this? Another platform talking about this brilliant show called The Polygamist. Like, I haven't even watched it. I'm so over it. Just wait, hold on, chill, okay? Because we don't do things like most podcasts do. Yeah, I have the confidence and the kahunas to say that we don't. So just bear with me, please. Please just bear with me, okay? And I thought I would also start by saying, or rather confessing, really, that I had an entire episode planned, completely different to what we're about to talk about right now. I did the research for that episode. I even recorded it. I was pretty darn excited about that episode, to be fair. And then Netflix drops The Polygamist, and all of that went out the window. I'm not even joking. Like, all of it, I scrapped it all. I was like, nope, this was cool, but we need to talk about this, okay? Because I told myself initially that I'm just gonna watch just one episode to see the vibe, to see what's going on, and all of that. And then one episode turned into me staying up at about quarter to 12 on a Sunday night, and I was on episode 17. And at the same time, I was on my phone reading what people were saying about this fictional man named Jonas Gomorrah. Like, he had personally wronged me. And so I woke up the next day, that Monday, and the first thing I did when I got to the office, before I even made my coffee, before I even opened my laptop, before literally I did anything, I entered the office and I could hear somebody across the office space, and they just said Jonas, and my ears went hot. My ears got so hot. And then a gentleman, a colleague of mine, walked past me, and he didn't even do anything. He just existed. And I gave him such a stank face, and shame. He didn't do anything wrong. He really didn't. He didn't do nothing wrong. He just existed. He had absolutely no context what was going on. He obviously knew that um, there's this show that's going out and everybody's talking about it, but he hadn't watched it. And so to receive a stank face from me, he was just like, hey, yo, what did I do? And shame, man, he knows it's not your fault. You were just the recipient of a crash out. I had joined the national crash out. Anyways, I woke up the next morning after that, just to yeah, I'd come down from the polygamist high of it all. And I started paying attention to what people online were saying about it. And it wasn't just oh, this is a really good drama, or this is a really great telenovela. The actors played their roles so beautifully. Although, yes, people were absolutely saying those things, but the conversations that I was paying attention to were deeper than that. People were relating to this show in a very specific, slightly painful way. Someone even posted, now you can't watch The Polygamist because you're going to relate to everything and get triggered. And the comments underneath that post were just full of people in agreement. Like, yeah, this is our lived experience. Like, we have gone through this. And it's crazy because I was asking around when I was at work. I was obviously we're talking about this, and I was asking, and everybody that I spoke to could relate to this story in one way or another. Either they knew a Jonas of some sorts, or they knew some of the other characters, or they themselves were a byproduct of um, uh, polygamy and so forth, and all of these things. The point that I'm trying to make here is that every single person that I know that has watched this can relate to it. Well, the people that I've spoken to, I haven't spoken to everybody about it, but essentially, yeah. And that is when I knew we needed to talk about the show. Not as a review, not as a recap, but as what is the show actually touching? Like, what nerve is it really hitting? Why are we so obsessed? And let me tell you something, I could not put my devices down. I had to have a screen on with it either in the background, and I'm still watching there on the side, giving it my side eyes and all of that. Like, I could not put the show down. I watched it in 2 days. Yeah, crazy. And also, what is this obsession telling us about ourselves? So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive into it. I don't think I did an intro. So you're probably listening to me and you're like, who's this person that's speaking? Well, my name is Diana. Hi, I'm the host of This May Be Nothing, and I overthink everything, even the things that don't need overthinking. And then I come on here and I tell you about the things that I'm overthinking, and then we have a conversation. And I really would like for us to continue this conversation. Maybe you have insights about the show that I probably haven't thought about, and I'd really love to hear it. Maybe you're hearing something for the first time, and I'd like to hear that as well. So, in the most unplanned, could not help myself way ever, we are talking about The Polygamist. Now, for the person who's listening to this episode, this podcast episode, and hasn't watched Polygamist yet, please go and watch it. I know there is a lot of conversations already happening online, and you've probably watched so many spoilers, and people can't keep their mouths shut, and you've basically watched the clips on TikTok. But I'm asking you, please go and watch it. It is 22 episodes long, but each episode is about 30 minutes or so. And let me tell you something, it will hook you. It will hook you. So please go give it a proper watch. I will wait. But also, you don't need to have watched the show for this podcast and this episode in particular to land, because what we're really talking about is the conversations that the show has started about relationships, about culture, about the very specific way some men treat women and call it tradition, about the women in the story, all of them, who are way more complicated than the internet wants them to be. We are going to get into all of it. And somewhere in the middle, I'm going to say something that might make you defensive. And let's be for real, that's how you know we're in the right territory. So let's go. Let's get into it. Okay. So the first thing I want to say, and I think this reframes the whole show, is that The Polygamist is not actually about polygamy. Okay, I mean, it is, right? It is. There's a man with multiple women in his lives, in his life. So technically, it is. It is about polygamy. But the show and the book it is based on is really asking a different question. It's asking, what is the difference between a man who chooses a polygamous lifestyle transparently within a cultural framework that everyone enters into knowingly versus a man who cheats and then calls it culture after the fact? Because those two things are not the same, but they get talked about it like they are. And I think a lot of what the show is doing and why it hits so differently for audiences here in Southern Africa is that it's pulling that distinction into light. The author of the original novel, Sue Nyati, she is a Zimbabwean writer, published this book way back in 2012. So it's not a new story, okay? Um, and she described what she was writing about as infidelity sanitized as marriage. And I keep coming back to that phrase, infidelity sanitized as marriage, because that's exactly what Jonas is doing. He didn't sit with his wife and say, "Hey, listen, let's have a chat. I wanna I want a different kind of relationship structure, you know?" That's not the conversation that he had. He made decisions, he kept secrets, he brought women into his life. And then when it all came out, the framing shifted to, oh, but this is our culture. And poor Joyce, who has been with this man since they had nothing, who built this life with him, is now supposed to just what? Accept that? Restructure her entire understanding of her marriage, consent to an arrangement she was never consulted about? Like, huh? And here's where it gets complicated because there are people, particularly online, particularly on the more traditionalist side of this conversation, who will say, but this is how it's always been. Men have always had multiple relationships. This is African culture. Don't be brainwashed by Western ideology. And I understand that argument, but and here, listen to, this is not what I'm saying. I'm not dismissing where it comes from, but I want to push back a little bit on this because, and this is how it always has been, is not the same as this is right. And more importantly, the traditional structure of polygamy in many cultures actually came with rules. The first wife had a role, there was a process. It wasn't just a man does what he wants and then labels it culture when he gets caught. And I think the show is making a distinction that matters. There's polygamy as a genuine, transparent, consensual cultural practice. And then there's whatever the hell Jonas was doing. And the difference here is consent. And listen, if you've been on TikTok this past week, you'll know people are having exactly this fight. There's a whole thread that went viral where someone made a case that and they said Jonas isn't even really a polygamous man. He's just a cheater with a good lawyer and a nice house. And the replies were a lot. Some people were agreeing. Some people were saying that's a Western lens. Some people were saying Western lens or not, Joyce didn't sign up for this. And I think that last voice is the one I keep coming back to. Whatever framework you use, cultural, traditional, modern, Western, Joyce did not sign up for this. That is true. But okay, I said the show is complicated, and it is. Because Joyce, Joyce is not the only woman in the story. And the show does something that I think is so brave, which is that it doesn't let any of the women be simple. And that's what I want to get into next. Okay, so we spoke about Joyce. Now let's chat a little bit about Matipa. Because the internet has very strong feelings about this woman, and those feelings are mostly she's the villain. She is a homewrecker, she is the problem, and she must be dealt with. And I get it, I understand the impulse. When you're watching it through Joyce's eyes, Matipa is the disruption. She is the one who arrives and accelerates the unraveling of this family. But here's my issue with that read, it puts all the weight on the wrong person. Now, hear me out, let me land, please let me land. Matipa didn't make Jonas do anything. Jonas or Jonasi, depending on where you come from and how angry you are at this man, was already who he was, right? He had already made the choices he made. Matipa just stepped into a situation that Jonas created. And she made her own choices inside that situation. Choices you can absolutely question 100%. But she is not the reason Joyce's marriage is in trouble. Jonasi is the reason why Joyce's marriage is in trouble. And I think there's something really telling about the way we rush to blame the other woman before we interrogate the man who created the entire situation in the first place. That reflex is very old. And it lets men off the hook in a way that I think we need to name out loud. And listen, I don't hate men. I don't. Please don't think I hate men. We are just talking about a very cultural experience that has been brought to light by an amazing Netflix show. Okay. So before you think, Diana hates men, no, I don't. But let's get back into it. Now, I said that, right? I said what I said, and I'm not here to make Matipa a hero, because she's not. At the end of the day, she knows what she's walking into. She makes choices that cause real harm. at the end of the day. The show doesn't hide that at all. But what the show does do, and what I think Sue Nyati does so brilliantly as a writer, is it she gave Matipa enough interior that you understand her. You might not agree with her, but you understand how she got there. And that is the most uncomfortable kind of storytelling that anyone could do, because it doesn't let you hate cleanly. It keeps asking you to see the full person, and that's uncomfortable. And then you have Joyce, who people, especially on TikTok, are riding very hard for. And I get it. She is the one who got blindsided. She is the one who built something and had it disrupted. She is the wronged party in the most obvious sense. And I get it. I see it. But Joyce is also, and I say this with love, she's a lot. She has constructed this entire public persona around a marriage that she knows is not what it appears to be. And the show keeps asking how much of Joyce's pain is about love and how much of it is about the image, about life, about not wanting to be the woman whose marriage falls apart. And I don't think that makes her unsympathetic. I think it makes her real, because how many of us have held onto something, a relationship, a friendship, a version of ourselves, at least partly because of what it would mean to let it go publicly, because of what people would think, because of the stories would have to tell. Joyce is struggling, and that struggle is so real. And it's not entirely about Jonas, and the show knows that. There was a tweet that has been doing the rounds that said, "My take." Hold on, wait, let me make sure I get this right. It says, "My take. Jonas was deeply flawed, but the women in his life were equally flawed, and in some cases, far worse." And let me tell you something, the replies under that tweet, it was a war zone. But I think the truth is somewhere in the middle of all of this. Everyone in this show is operating from a wound. That doesn't make everything equal, it just makes everything real. And I read somewhere that women in these kinds of relationship situations where the terms of the relationship shifts without their input report this very specific kind of distress that's different from regular heartbreak. It's not just "I'm sad," it's more like "I don't know which parts of my life were real. I don't know I don't know what to trust." And I think the show captures that particular disorientation really well, especially in who's this, in Joyce. Okay, let's switch gears for a little bit, because there is a whole other conversation happening around this show that I think deserves its own space, and it's about the fact that this story exists at all, that it got here, and what it means that it did. So here's something that I want to sit with for a second. The Polygamist, the book. It came out in 2012. Sue Nyati wrote it as her debut novel. She's Zimbabwean from Bulawayo, and the book blew up in Southern Africa. Like, I remember years ago, like, colleagues were talking about it. You know, there were conversations about it, and they were talking about these characters that for me felt so far fetched. Now, wait, before we continue, I do read. Okay. I do read, and yes, I do want to pick up this book and actually read it, because I do believe that some shows miss out on a lot of details that books have. Uh, and so, yes, I do want to read this thing. I'm not a ferocious reader. Okay, so I'm not like I'm not trying to read 30 books by the end of 3 months. Like, that's not my vibe. I'll pick up a book and I'll read it and I'll learn some stuff, but I'm not. You get what I'm saying, right? You guys get what I'm saying. What I do appreciate and I do love is how some directors can translate a novel into a film, and that's why I particularly enjoy a lot of films that were based off of books and stuff, and stuff like that. So I felt like I needed to reiterate that. Okay. Um but let's not digress. Okay. Now I need to find my place. Yeah, so Sunyati wrote this book in 2012, and the book blew up. Everybody in Southern Africa were talking about it. It was in the book clubs. People were recommending it to their sisters. It was beloved. It was a whole movement within the region. And then for 14 years, it was exactly that, a brilliant, beloved Southern African book, well known in the region, almost invisible to the outside. And now it's a 22 episode Netflix series that Americans are watching in dubbed English, which is not the same as watching it in isiZulu, let me tell you that for sure. And those Americans are completely losing their minds, posting things like, I didn't know I needed this. I mean, there are people in Texas experiencing Jonas Gomorrah for the very first time. There are people who have never heard of Bulawayo and suddenly they're invested in the story. And a part of me is like, welcome. Hey, welcome. We have been here and we've been here for quite some time. And the story was always this good. But I also want to ask a harder question. Why did it take 14 years? What did the story need to become before the world decided it was ready to receive it? Because it didn't change. Sue Nyati didn't rewrite it to make it more palatable to Americans or to Europeans or anything like that. Like, the bones of the story are still the same. The only thing that changed is the distribution. And I think that tells us something about which stories get amplified and which stories stay regional, about the infrastructure that decides what travels and what doesn't, about the fact that there are probably hundreds of other Sunyatis, writers across the continent, across the diaspora, with brilliant work that is circulating in book clubs right now that will not see a Netflix deal for another, decade? Maybe even ever. And it's crazy because I saw a stat recently that struck me. Apparently, the demand for African content on global streaming platform significantly outpaces the supply. Like, people are actively looking for it and there isn't enough of it available, which is wild to me because the stories exist. They've always existed. The gap isn't in the stories, the gap is in who gets to decide which ones reach the world. And I want to be clear. I want to be very, very clear. I'm not trying to diminish what Netflix is doing here. The show is getting made, it is getting seen. Gugu Gumede is giving a masterclass performance, and the whole world gets to witness it front row. All of those things matter, and it's important, and it's genuinely exciting. But I think we can hold two things at the same time. We can celebrate this and ask questions. What's the version of this where the story doesn't need a global platform to reach a global audience? What's the version where the infrastructure for African storytelling is built from inside, not dependent on whether an algorithm in California decides our stories are worth amplifying? On Reddit, when the Netflix adaptation was announced, someone wrote a big win for Sue and the whole Zim literacy society. And I cried a little bit, to be very honest with you, because yes, but also the win should have been possible without Netflix. That's the real conversation. Okay, last thing before we get super heated about Africa being left behind, because that's not what we're here for, really. Last thing, and this is the one thing that I've been building towards. This is where I tell you what I actually think. And here's the thing about The Polygamist that I keep coming back to. The show makes it very easy, especially early on, to watch it as a story about a bad man and the women he affects. And Jonas is a bad man. I am not defending him. I don't care who says what, he's a bad man. But if you stay in that frame, bad man, wronged women, you miss what the show is actually doing, which is asking why. Not why is Jonas like this, but why do these structures exist? Why do women, educated, capable, with options, find themselves in these situations? Why does the person with the least power in a situation often end up holding the most responsibility to fix it? And I think the answer the show keeps circling is because the system was designed this way, not by any one person, but by centuries of norms that said a man's desire as a natural force and a woman's job is to navigate around it. And those norms don't disappear just because we now have Instagram and financial independence and podcasts about our feelings. Ah, they go underground. They show up in the reasons we stay, in the stories we tell ourselves about why we are staying, in the very specific calculus a woman like Joyce does, weighing the cost of leaving against the cost of remaining and deciding that remaining is survivable. And here's where I want to be very honest with you, because I think we owe each other that on this show. I think our generation, we are very good at the rhetoric of leaving, know your worth, choose yourself, you deserve better. And I believe all of that. Don't get me wrong. Like, I really do. I do believe all of those things. But I also think we've gotten a little too comfortable judging women who stay, like leaving is simple, like it doesn't have weight and consequences and history inside of it. Like the choice to remain is always weakness, when sometimes it's strategy, sometimes it's love, sometimes it's this complicated and I'm not ready yet, and that's a human thing to feel. Joyce is not a fool. She really isn't. She is a woman making calculations in real time inside a situation she did not create and cannot fully control. And I think she deserves more complexity from us than just, girl, you can leave. Leave that man. That ain't your man. It's way more complicated than that. And then there's another thing that I want to say, and I think that this is the thing that the show does truly special. And the other thing that I want to say, and this is the thing that I think the show does that's truly special, is that it shows us that being wronged doesn't make you uncomplicated. Joyce has her own edges. Matipa has her own story. Even Jonas, yo, Jesu. Even Jonas. And I cannot believe I'm about to say this. Even Jonas has moments where you see the architecture of how he got there, which doesn't excuse him, not at all. Oh, I will never side with the Jonas. I don't care what you have to say. It does not excuse him, but it means the show is interested in something more than just a morality play. It's interested in people, full, flawed, real people. And I think that's why it hits the way that it did. Because when have we ever been given a story from this part of the world set in our specific context, speaking to our specific cultural tension, that treats us as complicated enough to handle all of that? Because when have we ever been given a story from this part of the world set in our specific context, speaking to our specific cultural tensions, that treats us as complicated enough to handle all of that? Sue Nyati did that in 2012 in a debut novel that took 14 years to reach the world. And I just want us to remember that. Okay, so we talked about why The Polygamist isn't really about polygamy. It's about what happens when men rewrite the terms of a relationship and call it culture. We talked about why the internet's impulse to divide women into heroes and villains misses the whole point. We talked about a Zimbabwean woman who wrote a brilliant book back in 2012 and took 14 years and a Netflix deal to reach the world. And we talked about the question underneath all of it, which is, what do we believe about the women who stay? And what does that belief cost them? Now, the question I want to leave you with this week is this: when you see someone navigating a situation that's costing them, what's your first instinct? Is it judgment, empathy, recognition? And what does that instinct say about what you've been taught to believe about women's choices? No right answers here, just something to sit with. Now, if this resonated with you, send this to the person you've been texting about the show. We should be all processing this together. I think Netflix owes every single person that watched this show a voucher for like therapy or something, because wow, it really was a watch. Guys, find me wherever you found this. This may be nothing. new episodes when something grabs me and won't let me go, which could be a month, 2 months, next week, who knows? Um, and yeah, that's all my thoughts for today. That's all I have for today. This may be nothing but proof that the most complicated love story on Netflix right now has been sitting on a bookshelf in Bulawayo since 2012. Think about that, and I'll see you in the next one.